Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon. John Dutton IE's last Yellowstone win steals Thomas Rainwater's ominous threat. John Dutton IE, Kevin Costner, and Thomas Rainwater, Jill Birmingham, have more in common than meets the eye, and the governor of Montana stealing the tribal chief's ominous threat in Yellowstone Season 5 proves it. The leaders are at odds throughout the series due to disputes regarding the Yellowstone Dutton Ranch, which has been in John's family for 140 years, but originally belonged to Rainwater's ancestors. The struggle to maintain the Dutton family's massive property, the largest contiguous ranch in the United States, defines the neo-Western franchise screenwriter Taylor Sheridan created. The struggle comes to a head in the final episode of Yellowstone Season 5, Part 2, when Case, Luke Grimes, sells the ranch to the Broken Rock tribe. Casey's decision exonerates the youngest Dutton from the Dutton family tree's burden of maintaining the land. Still, Case preserves the legacy that generations of his family died protecting because the Dutton family's mission concurs with the ranch's next stewards. Yellowstone presents the similarities between the Dutton family and the Broken Rock tribe as early as Season 1, evident in a threat the tribal chief makes to John Dutton. When becoming Montana's governor, John Dutton IE says, "I am the opposite of progress. I am the wall that it bashes its head against, and I will not be the one that breaks." While the speech is a little out of character for a politician, it is true to Kevin Costner's character and an iconic moment for the steward of the largest ranch in the United States, who becomes governor to protect his family's land from Market Equity's airport development. However, John's speech isn't entirely original. He steals its most memorable statement from Thomas Rainwater's Yellowstone threat. In Yellowstone Season 1, Thomas and John's first encounter happens when the former is imprisoned after refusing to return John's cattle that allegedly wandered onto the reservation. During the encounter, Thomas makes a threat that resonates with John's future speech. While adorned in orange prison garb, the chief reveals he isn't the underdog when Thomas tells John, "I am the opposite of progress, John. I am the past catching up with you." Both leaders state they are the opposite of progress, and Dutton could have gotten this from Rainwater, whether intentionally or not. While John steals Thomas' phrase and uses it to cement his motivations as governor, the similarity of the statements reflects the leaders' shared values. The slogans solidify that John and Thomas are both fighting against the development of Montana, albeit in different ways. John wanted to protect his family's ranch from the airport. Thomas desired to take it one step further, promising to use his casino development to purchase Paradise Valley and turn it back into wilderness. In the Yellowstone Season 5 finale, Rainwater follows through on his threat, albeit differently than he envisioned. The Broken Rock tribe tears down the ranch and restores it to its people. While John wouldn't necessarily have approved the actions, he would have understood that his son, Case, acted to protect the land. Ultimately, Case's actions were in harmony with his father's intentions, reflected in John's statement about the war being waged on their way of life. While Thomas and John started the series as adversaries, they eventually became quasi-allies after developments like the pipeline threatened the sanctity of the land. Beth Kelly Rayleigh confirms the alliance in Season 5 when she tells Thomas her father respected him. Ultimately, the similarities between John and Thomas show why the finale of Yellowstone Season 5 was a proper ending for the series. 7 generations of the Dutton family defended the preservation of the ranch. While development companies try to steal the land for financial opportunities in Yellowstone and the 1923 prequel, the Dutton family perseveres due to their dedication to protecting it. The family's ability to do this fractures after John Dutton IE's fate in Yellowstone Season 5, with his death putting an insurmountable burden on Beth and Case to pay an inheritance tax to keep it. Case's visions in Yellowstone Season 4 foreshadow that he and Beth will have to choose between protecting the ranch and their well-being. Casey's decision to sell the ranch to the Broken Rock tribe ultimately still protects it by keeping it whole. While Casey's plan isn't what his father would have opted to do, John's speech shows that the Montana governor aligned with Thomas Rainwater, with both men sharing a vision for Montana's future rooted in its past. The alignment of the leaders justifies Yellowstone's ending, showing how protecting the land was paramount to the tribal chief and governor. The vast plains of Montana stretched out like an unending canvas, painted with golden hues of sunlight and the distant whispers of grazing cattle. John Dutton, i.e., patriarch of the Yellowstone Dutton Ranch, sat astride his horse at the crest of a hill, his eyes scanning the horizon. The weight of the land, and the history tied to it, rested heavily on his shoulders. Yet today, he bore an unyielding determination. He had fought countless battles to preserve his family's legacy, but the one looming before him would test every ounce of his resolve. Across the plains, the Broken Rock Reservation had come alive with activity. Thomas Rainwater, its ambitious leader, stood at the helm of a movement that sought to reclaim the land he believed had been stolen from his ancestors. His rhetoric had grown sharper, his actions bolder, and his vision more ominous. He was no longer content with negotiations or legal battles. Rainwater was prepared to play his final hand, one that would shift the power dynamic irrevocably. For years, Rainwater had viewed John as a relic of a bygone era, a man stubbornly clinging to traditions that time had eroded. But he also knew that John was no ordinary opponent. He was cunning, relentless, and deeply rooted in the land that both men revered. Rainwater's latest maneuver was audacious. Leveraging a coalition of investors, environmental lobbyists, and tribal allies to push for federal intervention that would strip the Duttons of their holdings under the guise of reparative justice. Word of Rainwater's plan had reached John through Beth, his fiercely intelligent daughter and the ranch's resident strategist. "He's coming for everything," she had warned, her voice laced with both anger and admiration for Rainwater's audacity. "But he doesn't realize that the Duttons fight dirty." John had nodded, his expression inscrutable. "If he wants a fight, we'll give him one he'll never forget." As the sun dipped below the horizon that evening, John convened a council of his most trusted allies. Rip Wheeler, his loyal enforcer, leaned against a post, arms crossed, while Case, John's youngest son, paced with the restless energy of a man torn between his duty to his family and his own moral compass. Monica, Casey's wife, stood nearby, her presence a reminder of the delicate balance between the Duttons and the Broken Rock Reservation. "Rainwater's not just playing politics," John began. "He's waging a war, and wars are won by those who refuse to lose." The plan that unfolded over the next hours was quintessentially Dutton, bold, intricate, and steeped in both tradition and cunning. Beth's financial acumen had uncovered vulnerabilities in Rainwater's coalition, while Rip and Case devised a counteroffensive that combined subterfuge and brute force. But John had one more card to play, one that would strike at the very heart of Rainwater's campaign. The following week, Rainwater's ominous threat took shape. In a high-profile press conference, flanked by influential figures from Washington and tribal leaders, he unveiled his vision for the land, a sprawling cultural and environmental preserve that would erase the Duttons' footprint from the map. The announcement sent shockwaves through the region, galvanizing supporters and antagonists alike. But John was not idle. The morning after Rainwater's announcement, a convoy of trucks rolled onto Yellowstone's land. Inside were legal documents, historical records, and a trove of artifacts that John had unearthed from the ranch's archives. These were not just relics of the past, they were weapons in his fight for the future. John's next move was theatrical. At a hastily arranged press event held at the ranch, he stood flanked by Beth and Case, holding a tattered ledger in his hand. "This land tells a story," he began, his voice steady and deliberate. "A story of resilience, sacrifice, and stewardship. But it also tells a story of promises made and kept, promises that extend beyond my family to the very people Rainwater claims to represent. The ledger contained records of agreements between the Duttons and the local tribes, some of which had been honored through land-sharing initiatives and employment opportunities. It was a counter-narrative to Rainwater's claims, one that painted the Duttons not as oppressors, but as reluctant participants in a complex history. The press ate it up, but Rainwater was unfazed. That evening, he confronted John on the steps of the Montana State Capitol, where they had both been summoned for a last-ditch mediation. The tension between them crackled like a storm on the horizon. "You think you've won because you turned public opinion," Rainwater said, his voice low and measured. "But this isn't about headlines. It's about justice, and justice doesn't care about your family's legacy." John met his gaze unflinchingly. "Justice or revenge, because the two aren't the same, and you've lost sight of the difference."